This stuff is really useful in your job and you should be using it. So, one, SQL queries. Data is a superpower as a PM, but writing SQL queries is a bear. You can tell ChatGPT what your table looks like and what you want, and it'll write your query like that. Two, analyzing your competitors. You can say, hey, X person launched this feature. Please tell me the weaknesses in their implementation. It'll help you understand those so that you can then counterposition. Three, building out first drafts of things. You can ask it to write the first draft just so you have something to edit and improve. And then finally, like building out your 2x2s or your tables. It's really, really good at that kind of stuff. So say like, build out a 2x2 weighing the options of this feature if we work with Travis on a 7-day SLA versus a 1-day SLA. So I highly recommend everybody start using this tech and using it in their job. It's not that AI is going to replace PMs. It's that PMs using AI will replace PMs not using it.
Hello and welcome to the Product People podcast. Here we learn from the most amazing people in the product space for 30 minutes at a time. At Product People, our mission is to help companies discover and deliver great products faster. We do that by doing hands-on product management work at companies of all sizes, and also by sharing knowledge generously with our community of more than 20,000 product enthusiasts. My name is João Moita, and today we have with us Aakash Gupta, also known as the Product Growth Guy. Aakash has worked in product and growth for the past 15 years in various industries. He helped scale products at companies such as ThreadUp, Google, Epic Games, and Affirm. We talked a lot about growth, careers in product management, and even AI. I hope you enjoyed the episode. For people that haven't heard about you, can you give an introduction about your career? What have you been up to? What have been some of the main roles you've held in product?
Gosh, long career. So 15 years in product. And some of the things I'm most proud of, I worked at a Series D company, ThreadUp, and helped 10x their new customer volume, which helped them raise their Series E and IPO in 2021.
Well,
I worked at Epic Games and helped restart playtime growth on Fortnite, which was already the biggest game in the world, and took it from decreasing 1 to 2% month over month to increasing 5 to 6%. And most recently at Affirm, I helped Affirm scale from 0 SMB merchants to 160,000. So those are a couple examples about how I've worked in growth in different contexts, B2C, gaming, B2B SaaS, fintech, and in all those places that has really helped me establish an understanding of what growth is all about, what product growth is all about. And so now I write the product growth newsletter full time, and I'm really focused on delivering that career content to early and mid-career PMs so that they can really excel at their job.
that's super cool. Big career with big achievements. And another thing that's curious about your career is that you changed so much between industries. What are your thoughts about it? Like focusing and narrowing down on one industry versus like jumping from one to the other and getting different contexts?
So most of my career happened in the upswing of product management in an up market when the government was reducing rates. And so demand for product managers was enormous. All of you guys who are product managers now, if you've been product manager for a year or so, you know that about a year ago, every single day on LinkedIn, you are getting hit by recruiters, multiple recruiters a day. And now that has kind of dried up. And so my advice that I used to give product managers a year ago and now has dramatically shifted, understanding the role that luck has played in my career. In an up market, you can make shifts. So you can see in my career, functionally, I stayed within growth, but domain wise, I did B2B and B2C, and industry wise, I did gaming, fintech, SaaS, consumer. And so that works in an upmarket. But now, what I'm hearing from all of you guys who are interviewing and what I'm noticing talking to recruiters is that that narrowing component matters. And so I would encourage listeners to think about 3 dimensions of narrowing and try to narrow within at least 2 of them. So dimension 1, functional. That would be like whether you're a core PM, whether you're a platform PM or a growth PM. Domain narrowing is the second type of narrowing. So that would be whether you're in B2B or B2C. And then industry narrowing is the final. So for me, I've worked in some industries like fintech, gaming, SaaS, consumer. Other people work in other industries like government, social impact, healthcare, whatever it is. I highly recommend that you choose at least two of those, if not all three, to narrow.
Mhm.
And the reason to narrow is it's going to set you up for success as you're looking for your next role. As you think about being that competitive candidate in a sea, an ocean of PMs looking for jobs, people are definitely going to prefer that candidate who has done something similar. And so the more of those narrow boxes you can check off, the better. So the real challenge is, how do I find a set of narrowing that I could pursue for 10, 20 years in my career? And what I really encourage you to do is not be too perfectionist about it. The coolest roles, like the core platform for Google search in B2C, are also the hardest to get into and
Too crowded.
the most competitive. And so if you want to build a unique brand, consider like what you've landed in, whatever you've gotten, just continuing to narrow down that path if it excites you enough.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. It's interesting also because at Product People we work as consultants, so we have this chance of trying different and experimenting with different types of industries, which I think at least helps us open up all these different possibilities and try to explore different either functional areas or domain or industries to then be able to make a decision for a long term, yeah, for a long term period. So that's a very interesting one. So and you would say at least two of these domains to be.
Yeah, I would say so. So even now at Product People, if you had that rotational option, I would still recommend starting to narrow it down. Like if you're going
Mhm.
to do growth PM work, try to do growth PM work everywhere. Or if you're going to do fintech work, try to stay within that domain. It'll really help
Right.
you build a brand and stand out from other candidates.
Right. That's super cool and actionable advice. Thanks for that. And also in a recent interview on this topic of skills and career for PMs, you mentioned three main areas that PM needs to master, being teamwork, growth mindset, and not being a people pleaser but still get people to like you, which I find quite interesting. It's also a not so obvious one, this last one that I mentioned. Can you talk a little more about why it's important for PMs to avoid being people pleasers and how they can still build strong relationships with stakeholders without sacrificing their own vision and goals?
It's counterintuitive, but as a product manager, if you really want to build authority, you actually have to say no to people. And a lot of early career PMs, they think that they should say yes. So what will happen is their VP, they'll say, "Hey, I talked to the CEO. We're really excited about this product idea. Can you go build it?" And probably 6, 7 out of 10 PMs will be like, "Yep, I'm on it." And then the next week they'll have their brief review and then they'll just go on. But those extraordinary PMs, the PMs who are moving up the fastest, they're not like, "I'm on it" in that conversation. They're like, "I'll evaluate it." And then a week later, they have a meeting with the CEO, yes, and that VP, but it's all about their findings. Here's the data. Here's the user insights. Here's what you didn't consider. And based on that, here's what I recommend. And so you do need to take that opportunity that the CEO or VP is interested in your product area and use it. That's for sure. But you don't want to say yes. And so that's where it comes back to not being a people pleaser. You're still trying to please the CEO and VP, but you're doing it in a really authoritative, first principles, thoughtful way.
Yeah, yeah, that's good advice. Knowing how to say no or not to say yes all the time. Let's dive a little bit deeper into your career. There's one particular thing that I'm quite curious about before we go into product growth, which is about your experience at Epic Games with the launch of the Travis Scott concert, which is a quite interesting one. Like the big thing happening in the industry at that moment. And it also seems a bit like an idea that probably came from someone and you in the product team had to like kind of execute it. Can you unveil a little bit what was the process behind it? Like from the idea, and what were the product challenges that you had to solve to deliver that?
Yeah, absolutely. So, if you think about a large company like Epic Games, 5,000 employees, there's amazing pockets of talent everywhere. And in this case, we had hired this really amazing music partnerships person from Riot Games. And so when he came to the product team with the idea of a Travis Scott concert, we knew immediately like this could be big. 2 years ago, Travis was one of the biggest artists in the world. And because everybody was locked down in COVID, nobody could go to concerts. And so instead of just doing the normal concert that Fortnite had been doing, which was we had created this concert space, people could live stream a video and people could watch that video within Fortnite, we realized we had an opportunity to go massively big. And so, based on the conviction we had of how those live streams were doing, we realized we should create an interactive concert experience that is going to be the most attended concert ever. And that's what we achieved. We created an 11-minute interactive concert that 28 million people attended. And so it was the biggest concert ever up until that point. And if you think about the game Fortnite, it brought back millions of churned users, and each churned user is worth upwards of $30 to $50 per year. So you can imagine it drove hundreds of millions of dollars of revenue for Fortnite. There were tons of challenges along the way. The challenges I would talk about are working with musicians, handling scope creep, and thinking about the technical elements of scaling. So let's start with working with a musician, a creative, somebody who this isn't their number one thing. Sometimes it would take us days, weeks to hear back from Travis's team. And so this meant we had to push the concert back multiple times. We had an internal target date of something like February. It ended up coming out in late April. So you can see that as you manage these types of situations, and what we did going forward is we created like a service level agreement with the future artist teams, and I highly recommend people try to do something like that if you're going to work on something that it's pretty ancillary for Travis. Like, yes, it's representing his brand, but he's not the one going in there doing all the renders or anything like that. And so he's just the one okaying it, guiding the vision, and that was one of the key challenges.
Mhm.
Second challenge was handling scope creep. As you can imagine, we were deciding to go big, right? We wanted to create the most interactive, most immersive music video experience that people had ever seen. And so what went from an initial build that we could do with roughly like 20 to 30 people over 3 to 4 weeks turned into something that was going to take 3 to 4 months. And in a creative project like that, it's very hard to pinpoint this is the product lever that's really going to drive the success. And so here's the data that I'm going to show, or the user insight that I'm going to show, that this other feature is now below the line. And so handling scope creep in these creative endeavors is really difficult. And what I would recommend to folks is think about things like a drop dead date that you really communicate. Think about staging that drop dead date up really well. And so, what I used to do is I used to have a weekly project meeting where I would tell all the designers and engineers and gameplay folks involved with this that we have to complete this by March 2nd. And then Travis is going to come back to us by March 9th. And then we're going to complete that version by March 17th. I would repeat these dates over and over. I would send it in an email afterwards. And that was really important to controlling that scope creep. And then problem three was handling the technical scaling elements. So Fortnite had been doing season launches, and we used to have to cap the number of people that came into those. It would be like 4 or 5 million people. And as we forecasted the Travis Scott concert, we looked at what we could be getting of 30 million folks, and we realized we couldn't handle it. And so we had to get a really creative plan together where we created 4 showtimes for 4 different time zones throughout the world in order to allow that we could actually, from a server point of view, accommodate an experience with zero latency, with high frame rates and good performance. And so that was required some creativity, really getting into the technical details with our infra teams, with our DevOps teams to understand what is the predicted attendance, what's the limit. If we put it at this time, what's the predicted attendance? If we put it in this area, what's the predicted attendance? And so I highly recommend that PMs not shy away from those types of technical scaling details.
Super. That's very, very interesting. And it's quite illustrative of what PM work can look like, that you just have to deal with these random things. Like probably when you started your career in product, you never thought you'd have to like manage communication with Travis Scott, right? It's not something so obvious. Cool. One other thing. So now jumping a little bit more specifically to product growth, which is where you've been narrowing down and your main focus. Before we start, what's your definition of product growth?
I think that there's four ways to think about it. So, number one is like an overall product growth approach. And then there are three sort of specific applications that I've seen. And so, the overall approach is that product is driving growth, it's driving bottom line metrics. And you'd be surprised. A lot of product managers, they actually don't have growth related KPIs. In financial services, there might be product owners who have system for ACH transfers. And the metrics that they're thinking about are like uptime, how long it takes to send a transfer. There's no growth related metric. And so, one of the big things I stand for is like driving all product teams, whether you're a core team or a platform team, to think in terms of how you can drive growth for the business. And so that's really the main aim of my newsletter is it's applicable to all PMs because it's helping you drive growth. And that's a shift that some companies have made. So at Affirm, every PM was basically a growth PM because even if they were on the platform team, they're measured on incremental GMV, incremental revenue, incremental profit. So that's what it means to be growth focused as a PM. Now, there are three types of growth that sometimes you'll hear, like, I'm a growth PM and I want people to know about. So, one is kind of the B2C version where growth really represents the top of the funnel. So, typically, you're thinking about how do we take website visitors? How do we get them to log in? How do we get them to sign up? How do we get them to do their first purchase? And so, the types of tasks and artifacts you work on are twofold. One, like your initial onboarding experience, your initial website experience, your initial login and identity flows. That's like a big area that product teams traditionally work on in growth in B2C. And then the second is supporting your marketing team. So your growth marketing team, they're going to need Facebook pixel updates. They're going to need a system to manage their bids and budgets. They're going to need SEO, technical SEO work, and all of that, the marketing data pipelines to their Salesforce Marketing Cloud, all of that falls also within that bucket. So those are the two streams within B2C growth. The second type of focused growth that I see a lot is growth focused on high impact but low work experimentation. And this is the type of growth that's very common at places like Pinterest, where growth team is very full stack. They can work on anywhere in the product, but they're not taking on those initiatives that take 3 months, 6 months to complete. They're taking on those initiatives that, you can launch a quick front end, back end system within a week or two. And they're really kind of improving the overall product team's velocity and hopefully having comparable impact along the way. So that's the second model of growth I've seen. And then the third model of growth I've seen is B2B SaaS product led growth. And in this case, PLG is a growth motion. So in your typical B2B SaaS, especially if you're targeting like enterprise, you have your SDRs cold calling everybody who takes a demo, who then switch it over to account executives, who then switch it over to like field sales, and they make this long sale process. The product led growth motion is like flipping all that on its head. Product is responsible for getting the initial leads. Product is responsible for converting those leads into paying users and then retaining those users. And so companies that have done the PLG motion really well, like Airtable or Slack, they're essentially delivering really fast time to value, consumer level quality of user experience, and the ability to sign up and pay without ever interacting with sales. So these are the three main types of focused growth motions I've seen when it's not just growth overall.
Yeah, super. That's very precise explanation of what growth can be in different contexts. And have you seen like growth companies working separate from product? Is that something that you've seen working well, or it's something that you would not advise having a growth team outside of product?
I really shy away from
Or
generic advice like you shouldn't have a growth team where gets out of product should own growth, marketing should own growth, because frankly, I've seen it all work in 15 years. I've seen a cross-functional growth team full of product and marketing and engineers. I've seen a growth marketing team teaming up with a growth product team. I would say that there's also been an evolution over time. Like in 2014, 2015, being a growth hacker was super cool. And a lot of times that's how growth marketers made the transition into product. And we've seen this huge growth of the product growth profession. But nowadays, what I'm noticing is kind of the hot new way to organize is to have a growth marketing team and have a product growth team. Have the product growth team be the one who interacts with engineers and developers for product surfaces and data pipelines, and have the marketing team be the ones who interact with marketing ops for marketing tools for growth marketing tactics. So that tends to be what a lot of people think is the best practice these days. I would say don't worry about the best practice. Think about what's best for you. Think about your talent. Think about your company and your motion. I've also seen totally counterintuitive ways of doing growth. Like we have one growth lead who handles product and marketing working just as well.
nice. And based on your experience, could you share some examples of how you've used data and analytics to inform product growth strategy? And maybe what tools, techniques have you find most helpful?
Yeah. So the story I want to tell is how growth can be really holistic, how it can impact the whole business, and it's driven by data. So at ThreadUp, the company had raised its Series B, its Series C, its Series D when I arrived on the back of a promotion strategy. Let's offer you 10% off your first order. Then we increased it to 15, 20, 25, 30. I went onto the website recently and they had a 50% off. So the whole idea there was like, we paid for the visitor. Now let's make sure they make a purchase so that they get to the aha moment. And once they get to the aha moment, they'll retain really well and they'll pay back. Their lifetime value will increase. So the story I want to tell is about how you need to stay really close to the data, even once you're starting to build conviction around a strategy like this, and it's helped you raise hundreds of millions of dollars. What I noticed at ThreadUp was as we were increasing those promotion amounts, the lifetime value of those users was decreasing. And within the apparel industry, there's this phenomena where people become coupon shoppers. And unwittingly at ThreadUp, we were training people to become waiters for that next coupon email. And so they weren't making those purchases. That aha moment had lost its value. And so at ThreadUp, we needed to dial back that strategy. So first thing we did is we tried to figure out like what are the channels where we can offer lower promotions? Like if you organically visit the site versus if you came on a paid marketing ad. And we were able to do that. But as we went further into the data, we also learned that there was a huge price sensitivity. So basically, as you reduce the price, the conversion rate increases. And so we found a new lever. And the system we built that impacted the whole business was we rewrote the pricing system from the ground up. The pricing system used to be measured and monitored by the finance team in order to optimize inventory turns, which if you go look at ThreadUp's public filings are amazing. They're like 18 days. So they get these used secondhand clothes and they're out of the warehouse within 18 days. It's pretty cool. But what we did is we went in and we created a secondary objective function for that pricing, which was conversion, specifically for new customers. And the reason we're able to do so is if you look at the whole of ThreadUp's transactions, new customers are buying about 10% of the stuff. And so for 90%, you can still go ahead and optimize for inventory turns. But for 10%, you can add in another objective function around conversion. And the end result, fast forwarding through all of this, is we were able to be much more targeted about the promotions we offer, get the same conversion rate lift we were getting from higher promotions by reducing the price, and therefore overall improve our LTV CPA equation dramatically.
Cool. That's very interesting, and it's a game that you have to play in growth between balancing short-term results, like getting that user to convert right away, versus long-term growth. And actually, I wanted to ask for your thoughts and strategies around that. Like, how do you balance these short-term goals with long-term, and how do you keep the team aligned on both at the same time?
So the way I think about it is long-term metrics, short-term shipping. Frankly, there is nothing you want to do that in the long term of your business is going to hurt the metrics. And so if your aperture is so narrow that that is allowing you to graduate your experiment, it's a false graduation of your experiment. And you should probably lengthen your aperture. You should think about what is the 1 year impact? Even if we are only running the experiment for 2 weeks, what do we forecast is going to be the 1 year or the lifetime impact of your experiment? And so when someone says to me, like, let's run a sale to hit our quarterly end of quarter numbers, the first question I ask is, what is that going to do to next quarter? Is that going to pull forward some sales? And are enough of the sales that we're going to hit this quarter be incremental? And so I highly recommend if somebody comes to you with some idea like that, which is short term focused, you rigorously evaluate it. Going back to our point earlier about not saying yes to everything, you should build a model around it and see whether it actually has the long term positive impact. So that's long term metrics. Short term shipping is the other side of the equation. As a PM, most of you would benefit from shipping more fast and more often. Of the VPs of product and directors of product that I talk to on a daily basis, probably 60 to 70% of them are complaining about the speed of their teams. And so 60 to 70% of UPMs should be shipping faster as well. And so the way I would think about that is, how do you generate incremental milestones that are not going to slow down reaching your eventual objective, but are actually going to help you de-risk assumptions along the way? And if you can find those types of milestones, it's really helpful to create your project in that way. So I'll give an example. We at a firm had this goal to personalize the shopping feed for every single user. So the modules that you see in the shop tab are reordered to be personalized to you. Now, when I broke that down with the engineering team, I realized it was going to take almost a year between the ML models, the integration with the shopping tab, the admin controls we were going to need for our marketplace team. And so we broke down all three of those buckets. The ML model, we realized we could speed up the time to development by 5/6 if instead of personalizing on an N of 1 basis, we personalized to a segment. And so what we did is we put you into one of 10 segments and had a personalized feed for that segment.
Cool.
Then the component of integrating with shopping, we found a way where we could have some resources from the shopping team loaned to us if we gave them some resources. And then the component of having the marketplace team have their controls. We decided and worked with the marketplace team to find 2 weeks where they would have no controls over the modules, just so we could run the milestone 1 test. And if it succeeded, then in milestone 2, we would add their controls for admin changes. So that's an example where I broke down the 3 drivers of what was causing this 1 year ship, identified a way to create a ship milestone within just 3 months and create that positive impact. And so I highly encourage PMs to think that way.
Cool. Love it. All right. You've grown a massive following on LinkedIn and also with your newsletter on Substack. How important do you think it is for a PM to build a personal brand?
This is another one of those things where my advice has changed in the last year or two. I would say in this down market, if you're a PM, you should consider not posting on LinkedIn. And this is the advice no one's giving you. And so that's why I want to make sure you hear it, which is to say that in this market, your employer is looking for any reason to like cut the fat, trim the fat. And so people who appear like the job isn't their number one priority are on the radar and are targets and risks. And so the benefits to you of building a personal brand are if you really want to create content in the future, if you feel like recruiters aren't reaching out to you enough, if you feel like you aren't getting interviews. And so what I would recommend then is to write deep content occasionally and post it somewhere like Medium or Substack, not to get into your boss's boss and your CEO's face on LinkedIn, because what people don't realize is if you post on LinkedIn, it's pretty much going to show your CEO that post. And your CEO is on LinkedIn. And so they're going to know that you have this side hobby, this side interest. And if you do it like once every couple of months, they're going to be just fine with it. But if you're trying to emulate Akash's LinkedIn growth strategy, where he posted every single day about product management for 3 years to reach 140,000 followers, you will probably have to become a content creator one day. And so I recommend, like, if your goal is to become a chief product officer, do you see any chief product officers writing about product? Like, there are very, very few. And so what they tend to write about is like their big product launches. And that I think is awesome. What they tend to write about is like their company. And that I think is awesome. And so I used to tell everybody, like, go ahead, build your brand. And in the up market, the zero interest rate phenomena in market, it was actually a great thing. My LinkedIn inbox was filled with like 20 plus recruiters a day sometimes back in 2020, 2021. But now I don't think it's actually the best strategy. And so I want to give out that sort of alternative advice that nobody is saying.
Cool. That's very interesting. I actually haven't thought about it. Maybe because I'm biased in the product people community where we actually encourage each other to like share and talk about products. But yeah, that's very valuable advice. Thanks for that. Just to finalize our chat, you've been recently posting quite a bit about AI and about how it will change the world, in particular the world of product. For someone in product, what do you think are the biggest opportunities out there, and how should one get prepared for what's coming?
Yeah. So if you think about the opportunities, there are basically three recent breakthroughs: writing, image, and video. And so for most of you in product, it's going to be on the writing component, but depending on your product, it might not. If you work at Notion or Adobe or something like that, image or video could also be pretty interesting for you. So within writing, you guys all know like GPT-4, it's amazing. There's also Auto GPT, which I would recommend more people learn about. So what it does is it allows GPT-4 to give itself tasks. And so GPT-4 could tell itself, hey, let's say, like, let's give a really concrete example. Let's say you are building software for sales professionals. You could build a feature, an auto GPT like feature, where the sales professional just converses with it to say, this is my new target market within this new territory. This is my company list. And this is the type of messaging I want to do. And they could instruct the auto GPT to search the web and find the emails, write the emails, respond to the first email, and get a calendar invite. That's the power of these writing tools. And so I highly recommend that every single PM play around with Auto GPT and Chat GPT. And then they work with their heads of product, VPs of product, to think about how they're going to integrate that into their product. There is almost no product I can think of software wise that couldn't benefit from such an integration. And then the other two advancements, Midjourney has taken text to image to the next level. You can create photorealistic images. And so if that's applicable to your product, if you're building a website builder or a presentation builder or something like that, you should check out that tech. And then finally, like text to video. So between Nerfs and Runway, we've just seen a complete inflection in the last 2 to 3 weeks itself on the ability for you to render video. And so actually, I think that that's a really cool tool to recommend to your marketing colleagues. Say like, hey, if you guys want to spin up really cool ads, really cool assets for our website, this could be really interesting. And if you're one of those full stack PMs who is doing some of the website work, the creative work at a startup, consider using those video asset creation tools. So that's what I think about from a product point of view. The other thing I want to mention for PMs is this stuff is really useful in your job and you should be using it. So, one, SQL queries. Data is a superpower as a PM, but writing SQL queries is a bear. You can tell ChatGPT what your table looks like and what you want, and it'll write your query like that. Two, analyzing your competitors. You can say, hey, X person launched this feature. Notion launched AI. Please tell me the weaknesses in their implementation. It'll help you understand those so that you can then counterposition your AI implementation if you're, say, a Miro PM. Three, building out first drafts of things. So your first draft of your strategy, your first draft of your email to your skip level about your product review, whatever it is, you can ask it to write the first draft just so you have something to edit and improve. And then finally, like building out your 2x2s or your tables. It's really, really good at that kind of stuff. So say like, build out a 2x2 weighing the options of this feature if we work with Travis on a 7-day SLA versus a 1-day SLA. And it'll help you understand those pros and cons and put that directly in. So I highly recommend everybody start using this tech and using it in their job. It's not that AI is going to replace PMs. It's that PMs using AI will replace PMs not using it.
Nice. That's an amazing piece of advice to wrap up our chat. Aakash, thank you so much. There were a lot of great insights that hopefully will be very useful for our audience. And thanks a lot for your time.
Yeah, of course. If anybody wants more, find me in my newsletter. That's where all my best stuff is. So hope to see you there.
Thank you for listening to this Product People podcast episode. Make sure to follow our show on your favorite podcast app so that you don't miss the upcoming conversations with inspiring product leaders. We'd be really happy if you can rate our show on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, or if you share it with someone who might find it interesting. To find out more about us and access our community, check our website, getproductpeople.com, or head over to our YouTube, LinkedIn, or Meetup pages. You can find all the links in the episode description. See you next time.